In days of old William Smith, while making a canal, sir, found out how the strata dipped to the east with a very gentle fall, sir. First new red sand and marl atop, with lias on its border, then the oolite and the chalk so white, all stratified in order. Sing cockle shells and oyster banks, sing thunderbolts and screw stones. To Father Smith we owe our thanks for the history of a few stones. So said A.C. Ramsay in 1854. Welcome back, geology fans. Every geologist stands on the shoulders of the giants who went before and were brave enough to stand up and look out over their world with new eyes. Nicholas Steno and Charles Lyell were privileged men who were supported by their society, and we admire them for bringing us the laws of original horizontality, superposition, lateral continuity, cross-cutting relationships, and inclusions. William Smith, the man who most forcefully made us recognize the importance and power of the law of fossil succession, was not so privileged, which worked to his great disadvantage in life, and yet he did something that every true geologist knows is superhuman. He mapped the subsurface of an entire country, and had to invent most of the techniques of doing so on his own. I won't belabor the amazing story of his life, but highly recommend the book The Map That Changed the World by Simon Winchester, which details the heartbreaking story and yet gloriously inspiring life of William Smith. This son of a farmer, and in no way a connected nobleman, took an interest in fossils at a young age, just as I and many others have. But at his time, there was a lot of debate as to what fossils really were. Did they just grow in place in the rock? Were they natural formations of beauty, as we see in our geology museum? Or were they put there by an evil supernatural force to toy with us? Or could we trust the physical world and our rational brains and realize these really are the remains of ancient life on this planet? William Smith realized the reality of fossils, and when he came to career age, went to work in the local mines. There he saw even more rock that lay below his feet as he descended the mine shaft, and there he saw a pattern. The rocks in various areas repeated certain rock types, but even more, they showed the same fossils in succession. What William Smith gave us was the realization that a limestone is not another limestone, and neither the same as yet another limestone. Not all rock layers of the same rock type were of the same age and origin, and should be treated as separate individual strata or layers of sedimentary rock. As he went down the coal mines, he would see the layers and the fossils in them and realize the pattern. First rock A, then B, then coal, then D, then E. He noted the rocks in England dipped about 3 degrees to the east, and so he knew how to read the subsurface from what he saw at the surface.
Listen to my story about a man named Jed. A poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. The kinfolk said, Jed, move away from there. Said, California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools, movie stars. A Beverly Hillbilly.
Just as the oil boom promised instant riches to some, so did the coal boom of William Smith's age. If you could find coal on your land, you could gain the wealth previously unavailable to you. So rumor started to spread of William Smith's talents for finding the black gold of old, and he got hired to survey various properties. He might come to your land, and you say you want to dig, and you're thinking on this side of your property over here for coal, but Mr. Smith would look at the rocks outcropping on your property and say to you, no, don't dig there, dig over here, and go down this far, and you'll hit your carbon-based riches. If they followed his advice, they would hit the coal just where he told them, and would marvel at his divining powers. No magic here. Law of fossil succession and superposition with a little geometry told William all he needed to know to become the coal whisperer of the 1800s. But he was no mere lazy genius. He was a geologist, and used the insights he gained and applied them wherever he went across his country of England. If he spied exposed rock out the carriage window, he would tell the driver to pull over so he could examine the rocks and their telling fossils. After years of this work, William Smith was finally able to put together the first country-scale geologic map in 1815. Now, a geologic map had been produced in the United States already, but it was much smaller in scale. Smith also based some of his mapping and coloring techniques on soil maps already produced, so we can't say his work was wholly new and original, but it was the first time anyone had put together the geology of a country, thus making Earth resource exploration much easier and productive. This is a copy of William Smith's map, recently rediscovered and so in excellent condition, and here is a modern geologic map of England. William Smith also gets a great deal of credit because he nailed it. But brilliance born into lowly origins and some really bad luck turned against William. The Royal Society got wind of his map and completely ripped him off, producing their own substandard plagiarism of his work. But if you were a person of letters of the day, you were automatically biased towards the Royal Society and away from the man born of farmers. Too bad. Some damn good crop comes from the sons and daughters of farmers and lowly laborers. Unfortunately for William, he had to sell off his awesome fossil collection to the British Museum, but the theft of his life work took such a hit on him that he ended up in debtor's prison. Hey, but what a great day to get out of prison and get home to find a bailiff on your doorstep telling you your house and property have all been confiscated. Back to being a lowly itinerant surveyor for a number more years in the later years of his life while his wife lost her wits. Over a decade later, an employer recognized him and brought his name to the Royal Society as the proper discoverer of the principle of faunal succession and its application to geologic mapping. In 1831, Smith was given the first Wollaston Medal in Geological Sciences and pronounced the father of English geology. More recently, in 2015, a set of William Smith's maps was rediscovered where it had been kept safely bound in a leather binder for all this time. The colors on these maps are the brightest known, and thus the closest to the original production you could have bought from William Smith in 1815, had you known to buy it straight from the industrious genius himself. Even the cross-sections he produced are in pleasing color shading, and using various colors to designate formations in a mapping area is a technique employed right up to the present day, and will be for as long as geology is a practice. But equally influential was William's effect on understanding geologic time. Earlier in the late 1700s, Abraham Werner, the father of German geology, proposed a theory, Neptunism, of rocks all being laid down by a flood, an idea that did not find its evidence to support it. But he did note the chronological sequence of rocks and posited that there was an initial primary set of rocks, then secondary, tertiary, then finally quaternary rocks. And quaternary rocks were laid down in a time period that could be called the Quaternary period. The work of William Smith and other subsequent geologists using fossils to hone in on time periods allowed a more refined division of the vast reaches of geologic time for good use. The real insight of William Smith is that fossils have ranges within the sequence of rocks. A fossil that was easily preserved in many environments but only lasted a limited period of time became very useful as a geologic time indicator, and as such we call these index fossils. Aristotle noted that seashells in the mountains looked like seashells of the shoreline and reasoned that the fossils were actual remains of animals, and that the positions of the Earth's surface had changed over long periods of time. William allowed us to name those periods of time. Unfortunately for the memorization process of most students, it was mostly English geologists who followed William and started the naming process and gave us names of the Welsh tribes, such as the Cambrians, Ordovicians, Silurians, and Devonians. Cumbersome as the name Cambrian may be, they are the very organizing file system we use on the many rocks breaching the surface of our Earth. You can't be a geologist without the geologic time scale, which is the subject of our next episode, here on Earth Explorations.